For the remainder of the videos, before we get to the coaching section, we are now going to head into the second part of the self-regulation framework. As you can see right here, we are looking at of the second half of the infinity circle, the action, and we've got two actions we can take. We can take proactive conservation and we can charge our batteries. So we're going to tackle the proactive conservation first, and we're going to go back to the cell phone analogy. With our phones, we know that if we do a simple Google search, and here's a screenshot of a Google search that I did several years ago when I first had this idea of how I can preserve my phone battery. And sure enough, these top 8 ways to preserve and to conserve my phone's battery came up. And so, like with our phones, we can do proactive strategies to help us conserve our energy throughout the day. Let's now look at the biological category, physical, and we're going to look at all, not necessarily all, but a lot of different ways that we can approach this, and perhaps you could think of others. So the first, we want to reduce revenge sleep procrastination. So for those of you not familiar with this saying, it's basically when you either keep reading or you're watching TV, basically you know you should go to bed and you are doing other things instead of going to bed. And generally, at least from my clients and what I hear a lot online, is that people engage in this behavior in order to have some quiet time, some time to themselves, because they've been so busy during the day that at night is the only time that they can be all alone. And what's actually happening is that you're eating into your sleep. And so you're not engaging in something that could really recharge your energy. And instead, you're putting off the sleep that you need. So, what are ways that you can reduce this? And then we also want to start reducing bright lights, especially blue lights, 4 hours before sleep. So, what I see going on a lot is that people, and I was included in this, that people are using blue light blockers for their glasses and they're turning off blue light on their screens. And in reality, we need blue light. And this is what I've since learned, is that we really need blue light. And so the glasses that I bought since have no blue light blockers. And I allow the blue light and I look at my screens with blue light and 4 hours before I go to sleep. So generally, I target 10 or 11 o'clock, between 10 and 11 o'clock to go to sleep. And so 4 hours before that, that's when I have my blue light scheduled to be taken off my phone and to stop running on my computer screen if I happen to be doing work at night. And that's when I'll start dimming lights and so on in the house. So you want to start doing that. How else might you avoid technology? So we've, at least for the majority of us, we've heard that we shouldn't be engaging with technology, at least our phones, for 2 hours before we go to bed. And for many people, that's unrealistic. So how can we perhaps even not engage with technology 30 minutes before we go to bed? And then how can we potentially reduce the sugar, the fat, potentially caffeine or nicotine or other substances that we are consuming on a regular basis? How can we start implementing eating regularly? I know that in the ADHD world, there are a lot of people who hyper-focus and forget about eating entirely. And yes, this is a thing. And so how do we ensure that we're going to start eating at more regular intervals so that we don't binge at night or we maintain our energy levels throughout the day? And so perhaps you're not hyper focusing and forgetting to eat during the day, but your eating schedule is not regular. How can you make it more regular? Hydration. for many people, so I do see a lot more people drinking more water. How do you ensure that you're properly hydrated throughout the day? I've seen some MRI images of a brain that is dehydrated versus one that is hydrated, and the difference is stark. So, ensuring that we have enough hydration, especially electrolytes, that we need for our brains to function properly. Then something I learned, well, I've known about yoga nidra for quite some time. It's only recently that I learned that um, Andrew Huberman labeled it as NSDR, non-sleep deep rest. So it's yoga nidra is one practice of non-sleep deep rest. And so how can you bring in more non-sleep deep rest practices into your day, or even a nap perhaps would be a way to offset triggers. And then how can you also offset by tapping into your sensory? So this is where fidgets and stress balls and a whole host of other, there are so many sensory stimulation uh, products out there on the market that you can engage in and use to help conserve your energy throughout the day. Now we're going to stick within the biological and look at on the emotion side. So really what we are doing is looking at ways we can reduce, eliminate, and offset all the triggers. So in the physical category, we were talking about what can we reduce, what can we eliminate, what can we offset. So here we're doing the same thing. How can I reduce the amount of distractions in my environment so that it reduces perhaps the amount of frustration I'm experiencing? How can we reduce the amount of toxic positivity? And the first time I heard this saying was through Susan David. And it's when we're feeling not so great and a loved one, someone who is extremely well meaning, says, oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry about it. When we experience that, we tend to not dip into our emotions to process them. Instead, we're going to suppress them. And what we really want to do is process our emotions in order to conserve our energy. How do we avoid pushing forward and keep going regardless of the signs that our bodies are telling us that we need to take a break for maybe even 5 minutes? And can we now talk and vent to a friend to perhaps offset what's going on in the moment, or at one point during the day, just take a breather, call a friend, reach out to someone, and just vent to let some of that out so that you're able to conserve your energy and keep going. It turns out, and I wish I knew where this study was located, but I heard it so many years ago. There's something about a 20-second hug. And yes, the minimum of 20 seconds is what our bodies need to receive the signals that we are safe. And so, how can we perhaps look to someone in our environment that we feel safe and comfortable with that we can potentially ask for a hug? Or if there's no one around, our bodies will still um, respond if we hug ourselves. And so there is a practice that I've seen on videos, and where you put one hand under your arm, under your armpit, and you take your other hand and you put it over your arm, and you just hold yourself like this. And how can you do that for 20 seconds if you're all alone, or more if needed, if you're all alone, to bring your body and give your body a sense of safety that it needs in order to restore for a few minutes and then go about the rest of your day. And I have found myself many times needing to cry and suppressing that urge when, yes, we might be in the workplace, we might be at school, we might be in a public place. And how can we extricate ourselves and perhaps go to the bathroom and just take a few minutes and let ourselves cry so that we just get rid of all the cortisol and the adrenaline and let our bodies get purge those hormones just for the moment so that we can then restore and recharge enough to get through the rest of the day. Because again, These are proactive ways to conserve our energy. And so it's really important to understand that these are things that we can do throughout the day, just like we might be charging our phones throughout the day in order to conserve our energy or implement different strategies, different ways, like I showed you at the very beginning, different ways that we can program our phones or do things, change the settings on our phones so that we're able to not drain the battery as much. So the same thing applies for us. These are some of the things that we can do in the biological category, both on the physical and the emotion side, to ensure that we're not draining as much energy throughout the day. So join me now as we go into the next video where we're going to look at the psychological ways that we can reduce, eliminate, and offset the triggers.